All right. Oh, man. So I get the privilege of talking to y'all today. Our senior pastor, he does hospice. He had a patient that he needed to be there for, so he's not there today. But, if you haven't met him yet, his name's Lee. I know a couple of you probably maybe haven't met him yet. So he's not here, but you got old Marcus here to help out with today. We'll see how this thing goes. We're on a series, right? We kind of like doing series sometimes because it's a way that we can keep continuity from week to week, kind of build on stuff. And so, yeah, it's Christmas season, so we were having our leadership meeting here 2 weeks ago, was it, Nicole? And Nicole was just hanging out, listening to the conversation because we sit there and we just jabber jaws for about a couple hours straight. And she showed up with pizza, which is even more important than the leadership meeting, is that she brought pizza. Band mom, that's what we call her. Anyway, band mom brought pizza, and band mom's sitting on the corner or the encounter counter over there, and she said, I got a really good idea for a message series, because we were talking about doing message series. And she's like, why don't we do something called the core gift? And so we took it, and we kind of messed with it a little bit and came up with some ideas. So we're talking about, everybody has these gifts that we give each other through Christmas, right? Like maybe you want a Xbox 7. Is where you're going 7 now? I think it's actually 4 or something like that. I don't know. 5? Are we on 5 by now? I have an Xbox. I should know that, but I'm kind of okay with what I got for right now. No, that came out before that. They're naming nomenclatures all over the place. I can't keep track of it. I came from the PlayStation 4 era, so that's where I lived for a while. Now there's a PlayStation 5. They just do numbers. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's really easy to remember. Anyway, so maybe you want a PlayStation 5 or a new Xbox or a guitar or, something for your drum set, Joe. We all have things that we want because at Christmas season it's what can I get, right? What can I get out of this? But when we really break it down, I think that the season is really about giving, right? Because when God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten son, that means literally his only son. Okay? You ask me to give up my son right now, I'm going to slap you in the face. I can't do it. I cannot do it. I cannot give up one of my kids. That is something that ethically I cannot do. I mean, there's a story in the Bible where I think it was Abraham who was asked to go up and sacrifice his son. The angel of the Lord came to Abraham and told him to go sacrifice his son. So here's Abraham taking his son up onto the hill to kill him and sacrifice him to God. That doesn't sound very lovey and churchy, right? That's pretty creepy, God asking someone to sacrifice their son. Well, as he goes up to there, the angel of the Lord says, hey, wait, don't sacrifice him. I know you were told to sacrifice him, but don't do it. And there was a ram that got stuck up on a hillside, and that's what ended up being sacrificed instead. And I think the whole story is about how God provided another way. He provided another way through giving his son. So we got little baby Jesus, right? He's right down there. Little baby Jesus. We don't have a little baby Jesus anymore, okay? No, we don't have a little baby Jesus anymore. We got a king Jesus. We got a warrior Jesus. We got a mighty Jesus, a powerful Jesus. No, not at our house. Ours is there. It's in the safe place. But this was the beginning of all of that mighty things that God did through his son. He had to come first. And for him to come, it wasn't like he just, busted on the scene. He had to be sent. He had to be given. And so his Father, you have God the Father, God the Son, God the Holy Spirit. It's a triune being that we worship. 3 parts that equal one, kind of like how water can be represented in multiple forms. You got water, you got ice, and then you got evaporation, the gas form of it. Well, God can represent himself in 3 different ways. He can represent himself as the Father who makes all the decisions. He can represent himself as the Son, who we see who came to earth and died for our sins, and he can represent himself as his Spirit who lives inside of us and empowers us. So there's this idea around the season of getting and getting and getting, but I think that a lot of us in this room understand what it means to give. Okay, give your time, give your money, give your gifts to your kids, to your family, to your friends. I mean, I'm looking in this room right now and I see a lot of givers. And it can hurt sometimes when you give and give and give and give over and over again. And you're like, okay, God, I keep giving, but I feel like there's more just coming against me as I give. And as I'm kind to people and I'm showing your love, your grace, and your mercy, but I'm just getting stabbed in the back, I'm getting stabbed in the side, I'm getting scraped on, I'm getting punctured, I'm getting wounded. And it's difficult at this time of the season that we're in because we know that we're supposed to give, but really we're just asking because we're hurt. Today I get to talk about frankincense. So last week we talked about gold, right? G-O-L-D. I can spell that one. It's an easy word. Gold. Frankincense, I didn't know how to spell very well. I'm not even sure if it's right in my notes right now. But anyway, it was tough. I ended up figuring it out. And so we have these three wise men, right? You know, that come to Jesus sometime after his birth, and they give him these gifts. These wise men came from the east. They were called magi. They were probably intellectuals, studied the star. They followed the star that they saw in the sky, and they went to see Jesus. Most of us know this story, right? Pretty simple stuff. But they gave these three gifts. And so we're talking about these three gifts of gold, frankincense, and last week, and myrrh. And last week we talked about gold and some of the significance around what gold is and how it was represented. Does anybody have any idea what frankincense was even used for in the Bible, the Bible? Go ahead, Nicole. I think that was myrrh. That'll be next week. I'm pretty sure that was myrrh. From what I've studied over the last couple days, okay? Now, I'm not I don't got no PhD or anything like that, but from what I've studied, frankincense was more of an offering aspect of it. So when I did my research and looked through the Bible using this fancy phone app, you know, it has a search function, I found 18 references in the Old Testament for frankincense. So that means at least it came up in the search results 18 times. And a lot of it was in, like, I think there was some in, like, Leviticus when they're talking about the laws of how people were supposed to get their forgiveness and stuff. In the Old Testament, it all happened through animal sacrifice, right? Like, they didn't have Jesus who came to the world, lived a perfect life, suffered a lot of horrible things, and then died for our sins. They didn't have that. So for something to get paid for, like if I went over and punched Josiah in the face and we were living the Old Testament days, if I sinned against my brother, I had to give something to pay for that sin. You know, in Leviticus, it talks about, like, sometimes they would give, like, doves or birds as a sacrifice. Sometimes it was a burnt sacrifice. Sometimes it was a sacrifice, it uses the word cereal sacrifice, which is really odd to me. I think of, like, Captain Crunch pouring it in a bowl and giving it to Jesus. That's not how it was, I don't think, but it was like this mixture that they could offer up. And there were certain ways that they had to give these things. And so when you talk about frankincense, it was primarily used as an ingredient in Hebrew sacrifices. So get this idea of last week we saw the temple, right? We had a picture of the temple, this gold temple. Well, this is a little bit different because it was a tent, tabernacle. And when you're reading through a lot of the references, you hear about all of these. We think about how it looked a lot, right? We think about the temple, how it looked, the visuals of it. We don't really think about how it smelled. And if you read through some of the scriptures, I think I'm going to go to Isaiah chapter 60. Let me. No, that's not the right one. I got a bunch of scriptures today, and I think I'm having an ADD attack up here. So just pray for me, okay? The first reference of frankincense that I could find in the Bible was in Exodus chapter 30. So I'm gonna roll over there real quick, okay? So let's find it. Exodus chapter 30. You guys hear that little clicking noise? Click, click, click. Got that little spinny wheel up here. Exodus chapter 30. Huh? Yeah, it's kind of like a loading bar, right? It's buffering. So there's this whole chapter has a lot of detail in it, and it's basically God explaining how these sacrifices and incense should be sent to him, right? How they should be given to him. There's certain ways, certain things they're filling in, that they're putting in. But if you go closer towards the end, there's an instance where it talks about, frankincense a little bit. And it says, then the Lord said to Moses, so this is God talking to Moses, the guy that had the tablets and God wrote with his hand the 10 Commandments, all that jazz, who led the people through the Israelites through the wilderness in circles for, years and years and years. that Moses that God used to bring the plagues against the Egyptians, to bring the Israelites out of captivity. This Moses, that's who we're talking about. God's talking to him in verse 34, and it says this. And if you got your Bibles with you, you can pull them out and read them. We don't have it on the screen. Normally we would. But if you have them on your phone or whatever, I encourage you to maybe pull it out and read it with me. Maybe something will pop in your head that as you're reading it that I don't see. But verse 34 says this. Then the Lord said to Moses, take sweet spices, stacked onkia and gabalinum. These are sweet spices with pure frankincense, an equal amount of each, and make of them incense, a perfume after the perfume's art, seasoned with salt and mixed with pure and sacred. Mixed and pure with sacred. And you shall be, man, I'm having a hard time talking up here this morning. You shall beat some of it very small and put some of it before the testimony in the tent of meeting, where I will meet with you. It shall be to you most holy. And the incense which you shall make according to its composition, you shall not make for yourselves. It shall be to you holy to the Lord. And whoever makes any like it for perfume shall be cut off from his people. So God had this like perfume, this smell that he wanted to have in his tabernacle in the wilderness as they're setting up the tabernacle where they would meet God. It wasn't just a tent. Like if you were around it, I guarantee you could smell it. Unless you had COVID-19, because they say that you can't smell or taste when you have COVID-19, right? But if you were there, man, if you go to the Exodus 30 sometime and read through all of these different things that were going on in the temple of like the smell, the incense that was burning, it was this rich smell. And it represents God's presence. It's pretty cool to read it because you start getting a sense of what the aroma was like in God's presence. Now, frankincense, does anybody know how it's made or where it comes from? My mother-in-law, she's a big essential oils fan, right? That's her side gig, like what she likes to do. She sells some of them. I don't like the peppermint one, man, because that stuff is strong. You smell peppermint, it's like, whew, that's intense, man. You crack a bottle of that open in a car full of 6 people during a Christmas light show, and I'll be like, it's too much smell. But it's intense. So one of them that they have is actually they use frankincense in some of these. But I watched some YouTube videos. Who likes to watch YouTube videos in this room? Where's my people at? Yeah, YouTube. It's like the new library. Although some of it's completely fake. Yeah, there's all sorts of things in YouTube, man. But so I was like, that's my go-to. I want to figure out, where frankincense comes from. And I saw a couple different videos. I was going to share one today, but our media's not working. So I'll try to describe the process to you as best as I can. Frankincense and myrrh are similar to this, but specifically frankincense, it's a big industry. Like in Africa, there's families that devote their life to getting this stuff. It's so much that it was a CNN show that I was watching on. It wasn't on YouTube, it was on this website, and I found it, and it was a story about this man had been doing this for like 40 years, going out into the dry areas and finding these trees. So there's these trees, certain species of trees, and what they would do is they have a knife, right? It kind of looks like a spatula. I mean, like if you're chipping paint or something, kind of like that. Something that they can scrape and stab and get into the wood. And they'll go up to these trees, these specific trees, and they'll mar the tree. They'll stab it, they'll slice it, and they'll beat on it. And a little bit of ooze will come out of that tree. Like, ever seen a pine tree and it pusses? It has that like sap. It has a sap to it. Well, these trees have a sap inside them, and the only way to get to them is to stab them, to wound them, to break them open, and then it oozes out. But they can't take it yet, okay? The first time it comes out like this white texture, right? And so they mar the tree, and they walk away, they go to the next tree. Well, then the next day that they come along, they'll scrape that off, and they'll mar it again, and more white will come out. It takes about 3 times, from what I read and watching the videos, for this frankincense jelly, oozy stuff to come out of it and to be usable, because then it has like this orangish, yellowish kind of tint to it. And then they can take that and they can do whatever they do to synthesize it and put it into perfumes and oils and anything that has a smelling sensation to it. And actually, frankincense in some circumstances can have like health benefits, I guess. It can, my mother-in-law would probably know all about it, so I have to ask her sometime, but they're supposed to be, do what? So Meredith is saying digestion. So apparently frankincense can help with digestion. It's not just something that smells good. There's a purpose behind it. And so, when we read last week, I believe it was in Matthew, of how these wise men came to bring gifts to Jesus. They brought gold, but then they also brought frankincense. And so there's this idea of giving at this time of year. And why would they give frankincense? And I'm all over the place this morning, so I apologize. But why is frankincense such an important gift when we talk about it metaphorically about Jesus? I think, and this is just my interpretation, what I get out of it, I think that the importance of the gift of frankincense is to understand that your marring and your beating leads to somebody else's healing down the road. Okay? Jesus' marring, his beating. Think about Jesus being represented as this tree. So Jesus was bruised, he was beaten, he was whipped, he was pierced. And through all this came the healing that we get to live in day to day. The power that we get to live in. If there's no cross, then there can't be a grave. And if there's no grave, then there can't be a resurrection. And if there's no resurrection, we're all here doing absolutely nothing. We're just silly, stupid people following a fake God. But when that tree is marred the first time, I feel like it represents the battles that Jesus went through and the opportunity he had to fight back and be evil about it. I mean, we think that Jesus went through like that first 30 years where he wasn't in his ministry. You don't think that he had a broken heart. You don't think that some of his family members got sick. I guarantee there's 30 years. A lot happens in 30 years. And Jesus didn't even start his ministry until about 30 years. And I think his ministry was only like 2 years long. Everything we read about was about 2 years. So all of these things happened to Jesus, and he gets marred and marred and marred and marred and beaten, and it all ends in his death. He has friends that betray him. He has people that talk bad about him behind his back, about Jesus is fake, Jesus is this, maybe he's doing all of this power by the devil. People talking about him behind his back. And I'm guaranteed there's people in this room, because it's happened to me too, where people talk about you, and it's like they're taking a knife, and they're going up to you, and they're just digging in and puncturing you and hurting you. And the enemy sends these things your way. He allows these things he comes at you because the enemy's goal is to seek and destroy. Okay? He wants to seek and destroy you. I don't know where you're at in your life, but the devil doesn't like that you're in this building right now. He don't like that you came to church and you're listening to God's word. He hates that. It's a battle. But when you take a step and you start to listen to what God has to say, you're going to realize that these attacks that have come against you can lead to something good down the road. So I think that when we talk about frankincense, it's a reminder that Jesus was going to be sacrificed, okay? He was going to go through a sacrificial experience. And so, yeah, it prepped him for that. So the Magi came and they gave him frankincense, gold to represent, his power, his kinghood, and everything, and his royalty. But then frankincense to represent, that he was going to be sacrificed. But then it's also a reminder of how he should behave throughout his life, Yeah, when people come against me, I have to realize that it's not them coming against me. It's for nothing. It's the enemy challenging me, and I have an opportunity to give back something good. When you're cut spiritually, what are you going to give back? That's the question we got to ask ourselves in December 2020. When you're hurt by somebody, what are you going to give back? Are you going to give back malice? Are you going to give back hate? Are you going to get them when April Fool's comes around? For the next holiday, you're going to get them back? What are you going to do? Jesus talked about turning the other cheek. That when somebody comes and hurts you, the best way to conquer the hatred that's in their heart is through grace. It's through grace. See, when that tree's marred and it's cut, it's getting prepared to give out something that has worth. And a lot of times when we're walking from day to day, it's like we get marred and we're like, okay, God's letting me just struggle and I'm just going to get worse and get worse. No, the challenges that you go through prepare for you and open you up to the ability, if you allow God to fuel you through grace and fuel you through his mercy and understand what his fruits of his Spirit are, and his Spirit lives inside of you, the more you get cut, it gives you an opportunity to be broken enough to be real enough. We all want to pretend that we're okay, but we're not. We're not okay. But that's okay in itself. Because when we're real with Jesus, he can be real with us. And we can show people, I was marred right here. You see these knife wounds in my back? I got hurt. Someone hurt me. But God's mercy and grace was sufficient enough for me to show love to that person, and we overcame it. Case in point, I'll use my father as an example because, I grew up a relatively simple life and not too many struggles. I've been married twice. I've shared that story a few times recently. It was a whole bad 4-month experience, and now I've been married for 10 years to Ashley and wonderful kids. But I'll use my dad for an example. My dad grew up. His mom and dad got a divorce, and the family split, and then my grandma, she's married to a wonderful man, Paul Schooley now. He's great to her and great to all their grandkids and stuff. But in the meantime, there was a stepfather that came into the scene in my dad's life that was not a very good dude. Lots of violence going on in the family, drug usage, all this stuff. It was terrible for him. And so my dad, from day to day, as he would tell me, he was getting marred. He was getting, not physically stabbed, but like hurt constantly. You ever, some of you might be able to relate to this, when you come home and you're just not sure what you're going to come home to, right? You have no clue what you're going to come home to. Home is not supposed to be that way. It's supposed to be calm and peaceful and secure. It's supposed to be a safe place. But when my dad was growing up, he didn't have that in that in-between time. He had pretty much chaos constantly. And so it came later on in his life when he got saved and then met my mom and then had us. This man that had hurt their family was still out there. I mean, I think he had went to prison at one point. And my dad had this struggle, right? Of how is he supposed to forgive this man after everything that this man had done to him? How can you do that, And I can't go into a lot of detail, but like the things that went on in his life, it's like, how in the world, how can this be used for God's good? Like this stabbing, these wounds, these spiritual and these physical wounds that I have, how can God use these things? He came to a point where he was like, you know what, it's eating me up, this hatred, this frustration, I gotta give it up. And so my dad never went to the dude and said, hey, I forgive you or anything like that, but he decided in his heart not to hold that anger and hatred towards the man. And that freed my dad up to move past it. And so this idea of Christmas being about grace, about connection with God, and we don't have to live separate from him anymore. If we can interact with him and figure out how much he loves us regardless of the things that we've done wrong, because he has the right to judge us. I mean, he's God, he's perfect. If a child murderer walked into the room right now, a convicted convict, I guarantee you we would all tackle that dude to the ground and take him to prison. Okay? We would. Because we would defend our kids, right? But imagine if we were that child murderer walking in here and we needed God to intervene in our life. Think of the worst thing you could possibly be, walking into the building this morning and looking for love. What are people gonna find when they look at our life? Are they gonna see God's grace? Are they gonna see God's mercy? Or are they gonna see the malice? You go to Micah chapter 5, and it's prophecy, right? Micah chapter 5, let me roll there real quick. This is coming from the prophet Micah talking about Jesus is coming. Now the Israelites, they struggled with a bunch of things. They were constantly beat up. And it says, now gather yourself in troops, O daughter of troops, in state of siege has been placed against us. They shall smite the ruler of Israel with a rod, a scepter on the cheek. But verse 2 comes along and says this, but you, O Bethlehem, you are little to be among the clans of Judah, yet out of you shall come forth for me who is to be a ruler in Israel, whose goings forth have been from old, from ancient of days. And that's referenced, I believe, in Matthew later on. And so that's talking about Jesus coming to this world. Why is it so important that Jesus came to this world? Because he represents who we should be. And he represents who we should be at this point. We should give lovingly and kindly. Now, if you're in a bad situation, yeah, you have to step away from a bad situation sometimes. You know, my dad didn't have to hang around that dude that hurt his family, but he did have to show him grace and saying, I'm making the decision to forgive. And I don't know why I'm harping on this tonight or this morning. I don't know why I keep coming back to this, but like, we have to realize that the pain that we've endured will bring about something good. Think about a woman when she's giving birth, when she's going through these pain, the stomach pains, even up to birth, man. I mean, my wife had C-sections every time, but up to birth, it's an uncomfortable experience. I mean, you're carrying around this bowling ball everywhere, right? It's heavy, it's hard, it's difficult. And then the end is always a trialsome experience. But out of that comes something beautiful. And so I feel like what God wanted me to share with you guys this morning is that, don't go weary in well-doing. If you've been showing grace, continue to show grace. If you've been showing mercy, continue to show mercy. Because God's gift to us was a sacrifice of his son, the most prized thing that he could possibly, essentially himself. When we say son in the Bible, it's a representation of who God is. My son Liam over there, I hope he's like me but better. So it's the same thing. God gave himself, his very essence, so that we could be free and we could learn how to be like him. So I just want to leave you with that this morning, guys. Like, what's coming out of your pain? Just like when frankincense is cut basically from a tree, when it's marred, sometimes you might have to be marred three times before anything good comes out of it. It may not be the first time. You may not see it yet. But God has a plan. He has a plan and a structure for your life. So I want to encourage you not to stop. Don't give up. Don't get depressed. Don't shy away from what God's called you to do. If you've been walking and fighting the good fight, keep doing it, because God's going to do something through that. Your consistency is powerful. When you step up for righteousness every time, you get knocked down, you get back up, you get knocked down, you get back up. Don't stop. Don't give up following after God, because he has a plan for your life. If you just have enough faith to get up out of bed every morning and take another step, and it's going to hurt. It's going to hurt. You're going to get marred again, but eventually God's going to bring something beautiful out of it. And it's not just the fact that you're going to be able to share your story with somebody. It's more than that. Yeah, I can share my story, but I understand what it means to go through a divorce. I get it. I understand the pain. And when you understand it, you can act and behave in a different way. If you've lost a loved member, a family member in your life, you understand what that's like. And since you understand it, it changes your behavior. God didn't promise us that we wouldn't have trouble. Jesus said the opposite. In this world, you will have trouble. And you're going to hear that a lot at this church, because we have values of pressing and understanding that you don't get anything good out of anything easy normally. Nothing that's easy and nothing that's cheap is good. When you chase after something, there's value in it. Like when you're on your bike and you're biking and you're 30 minutes in, you want to give up. When you're doing your yoga, I know you probably still do your yoga, when you got what is that one stance? It's like this or whatever, and you're holding it and your core is all tired and your legs are tired. Are you going to keep going? It's all tied to this fact that we will have trouble. What will we do with the trouble? What will you do with the pain? And I think that's the question this Christmas season. What are you going to do with the pain? Because we have an option. We can let it hurt us, eat us up, or we can allow God to use the pain in the circumstance to bring something beautiful. Because, what the enemy means for our harm, God will turn it out for his good and his glory. And I truly believe that. I've seen it firsthand in my family's life and firsthand in my life. So that being said, man, if you guys are dealing with anything, you need prayer, you need to talk, our ears are open and our hands are open and our church is open for whatever you need, whatever we can provide. We love you guys, and we want to encourage you that, it's not over yet. It's never over until you stop. If you stop, then it's over. But just keep trusting that God has a plan.